I welcome you to this one-week course for the LSAT India. Today, we are looking at the second session for reading comprehension, RC2. It is very important, make sure you look at RC1 before you look at RC2. Dear students, before I start with part 2 of our 7-part series on reading comprehension, there are a few important points I want to tell you. The first of these is, make sure you start with part 1. In part 1 of this series, I have explained some foundational principles. I have also discussed a couple of points that you would be able to use to better understand this lecture. Therefore, I strongly recommend start with part 1. You can find the link to part 1 by clicking the I button at the top right of the screen. Okay, that's the first thing. You may have heard that there's a difference between teaching a person how to fish and between giving him a fish. So in this video, as well as the next, RC2 and RC3, I will be teaching you how to fish, right? So you might believe that I'm not giving you a lot of fish, but I'm teaching you the technique of fishing so that you can solve any question. As far as the answers are concerned, yes, I will be solving the questions, I will be explaining the questions to you, but that is not the sole objective of these lessons. In fact, if you were to look at the prep tests that are available on the official LSAT India website, you have the questions and you have the answers. So you have all the fish. The fish are plentiful. What you don't have is some explanation. You don't have the method of how to get these fish, and this is what I will be doing in this video and the next video. So it might appear to you that this video is kind of long, that it is kind of too deep, that it is unnecessarily intricate. You might even find it boring at times, but my advice to you is, since I'm teaching you this procedure, make sure you stay patient and that you watch this video till the end. If you watch this video till the end, and also RC3, so this is RC2, also watch RC3. By the end of the first 3 videos, part 1, part 2 and part 3 of RC, I am quite confident that you'd be able to attempt any RC question much better. So stay patient and stay till the end. Also, in this video, I'm going to go stepwise. So I'd be breaking down the passage that we are seeing into smaller bits, and I'd like you to focus on the part that I'm showing you. So make sure you follow the steps and the guidance that I'm giving you in the course of this video. That is how you will best be able to benefit from this lesson. Now that we've discussed these points, let us jump into today's lesson. For your reference, I'm just letting you know that this is the set of questions that we would be attempting today in this lesson. Alright, so what you see on your screen here is essentially what we will be covering in the next 2 lessons, including this one. So basically RC2 as well as RC3 will deal only with this one passage. Now this might appear to you like this is very little, but then, like I said, be patient, stay with me. You will benefit a lot in the manner that this is going to be played out. Okay, let's have a look at what we see here. On the left, you see the one passage that you have. So this that I'm just highlighting is your passage, and then this passage is followed by some questions. So you can see it starts off with question number 15, then your question number 16, on the next page 17, and this goes up to question number 22. So you have here a total of 8 questions, right? Now, a passage that is followed by 8 questions. Question number 1 for you. How much time do you think you have to solve these questions? Like, how much time can you give yourself in the exam? Now, given that in the LSAT India, you have 35 minutes for one section and around 25 questions to solve, that roughly calculates to something like 85 seconds. Let's keep it at 90 seconds for one question, which is basically 1.5 minutes for one question. What that means is that for this set of 8 questions, you would have around 12 minutes. Does that mean that you have to finish this passage in 12 minutes? Well, I'd say no. Let me tell you why. Let me explain why. In the LSAT India, you are assessed on the basis of a percentile, right? And a percentile score is very different from a percentage score. So let's contrast the two things, percentile and percentage. What I'd, from my experience, expect, because we don't have the official LSAT figures as such, but from my experience of teaching various students and my experience with similar exams like CAT and CLAT, I can pretty safely say that if you wish to score a percentile of 90 percentile, right? If you want to get a 90 percentile, you need to get a score of something around 50%, which means that if you can get half the total number of questions right, you will get a percentile of 90. What that means is that we just calculated that if you were to solve all the questions, you'd need to get these 8 questions done in around 12 minutes. But when you factor in the point that you don't need to solve all the questions, let us say out of 25 questions, if you are able to solve say 15 questions, I'd say that's very fair. Now that increases this time for these 15 questions to around 20 minutes, which means that even if you can manage to solve these 8 questions, these 8 problems in 20 minutes, you are still giving yourself a fair chance at doing well in the exam. So I'd say that if you can finish it in 12 minutes, that's excellent. You are heading for an excellent score. True. But even if you can manage to do these 8 questions in 20 minutes, you're still going to score very well, and your scores will be enough to get you into the college of your choice. So I would say focus on accuracy rather than on speed. This is the first piece of advice that I'd like to give you. The second thing is that as you practice it, you will be able to get speed. So make sure that there is a method. In this video, I will be telling you the method. Once you have the method, you will start getting speed. All right, now let's go ahead. So what you see on your screen right now is the passage, right? The passage on the basis of which you are asked the questions from question number 15 to 22. In this video, RC2, I will only focus on the passage. So in RC2, which is this video, I will only focus on the passage. We will solve the questions in RC3, all right? So both of these videos would be around 35 minutes or so each, and it will take us these 2 lessons for us to be able to fully solve this passage. There are a couple of reminders that I want to give you before we start reading the passage in this lesson. The first thing is, I need to remind you that we are doing reading comprehension, right? So what is the meaning of comprehension? When do you know you have been able to comprehend something? I had given you this test in the previous video. You can be confident that you have comprehended something if you are in a position to predict, or if you're in a position to anticipate, which means that let us say you read something and that has given you an opinion on the basis of which you feel you can predict what is going to happen. In case you are able to do that, then I'd say good, bravo, you're in a position to anticipate and therefore you are comprehending. That's the first thing. The second thing is, how much do we read at one point? This is what you call making proper chunks, right? It's called chunking. So you have an entire long passage. Now you can break it down into some parts. Now what is the ideal size of a chunk? What is the ideal size of a chunk? I'd say the ideal size of one chunk is a paragraph, right? So one paragraph is one ideal chunk. Now what do you do with these chunks? It means you read one chunk at a time. So you read one paragraph at a time, and once you're done with reading that paragraph, you pause for a moment. So once you're done reading with one paragraph, you pause for a moment to see as to how much you have been able to understand. Okay, so now let's have a look at our passage and the structure of our passage. Okay, make sure you keep these points in mind whenever you read a passage, including this one. As you can see, in this passage there are 3 paragraphs. This is the paragraph number 1, this is paragraph number 2, and this, the longer one, is paragraph number 3. So what we will do is that we will read this paragraph wise, okay? And I'd like you to read with me. I will, like I said, follow the steps. we will go in the order of the steps that I discuss, and that is how we will be able to make the most of this. So we will begin by reading these paragraph wise. In each such paragraph, you first read and then you try to see if you are able to anticipate what the next paragraph might be after reading this paragraph. That's the first thing. Second, are you able to summarize it in, say, a couple of points, 1 or 2 points? If you're able to do that, it means you're successful. Now you can go to the next one. Do not start evaluating yourself after reading just 1 or 2 lines. So do not do this, that you read just this much, you read 2 lines, and then you're evaluating. Leave evaluation for after a paragraph. So your first evaluation happens here, your second evaluation happens here, and your third evaluation, of course, finally happens after you have read the third paragraph. Now let's read these paragraphs one by one. So just in order to make this a little more reader and screen friendly, I have changed the format a bit. So I have placed these two adjacent to each other. So what you see here is paragraph number 1. This is the paragraph number 2, and then this whole thing is paragraph number 3. Now let's begin with paragraph number 1. Alright, so I welcome you to the first step that you have to follow now. Step 1 is make sure you pause the video at this point and try to make sense of this video by your own self. Now what is the meaning of making sense? That means you should comprehend it. And when can you say that you've comprehended it? You can say that you've comprehended it when you can summarize this in your head in a few points. Let us say you can kind of identify 2 or 3 points or even 1 point in your head. I would say that you have taken a step forward as far as comprehension is concerned. The next thing that you should be able to do is that you should be able to anticipate as to what comes next. Okay, now take a moment, solve it by your own self. Think about it by your own self, and then we will start off. Also, let me tell you that there is no great hurry in this. Take the time that you need. If you need 5 minutes, pause the video for 5 minutes. If you think you need 10, pause the video for 10 minutes. It is more important for you to get this procedure, and it is possible for us to learn this procedure from just one passage. All right, everything can be learned from just one thing. If you learn how to sing one song well, you can sing any song well. Otherwise, let's say you pick the simple part of 100 songs, you continue to remain a mediocre singer, right? So if we do one passage very well, let me tell you, you'd be able to solve any question thereafter. So be very patient while doing this. Trust this process and take your time, and take as long as it takes for you to be able to comprehend it. I'm waiting here. Just pause the video and go ahead and read it. Alright, so I hope you've done that already. Now I will talk about it. Make sure you're following the steps. Make sure that you pause the video. You are not allowed to cheat in this, because if you cheat, then you end up cheating yourself. Do not do that. Okay, so what we'll do here is we will start by reading the first sentence. As you can see, this first sentence is one long sentence that really is half the paragraph. So your first sentence starts here and ends here. If you've read this sentence, you might have realized that reading a sentence as long as this is not easy. It is not easy for me. It is not easy for anybody else. Which is why we need to use some tricks, and that is what I will tell you now. Okay, generally you'd find that a long sentence, right, has some punctuation marks. It generally will contain a lot of this punctuation mark, which is called the comma, right? So you'll find many commas. As you can see, there's a comma here, there's a comma here, 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 and then you see it here. So this one sentence has a lot of commas, and this is the trick. This is how you break a larger sentence down, right? Let me tell you through an example as to how you can break a sentence with commas into a smaller sentence, or into smaller sentences, or into sentences and clauses, and then put them back and understand them. Let me give you an example. Let's say Ramesh, who is 6 feet tall and hails from Rajasthan, plays basketball at the stadium in Jaipur. Alright, it's not a very meaningful sentence, but I want to show you something. This looks like a long sentence. There is something I can do to immediately shorten the length of this sentence without affecting the essential meaning. So every long sentence basically has one main fact or one main point. Now, what is it that I can remove from this in order to still make sense? Generally, what you can remove from a sentence is what is known as the qualifier. Now, what I mean to say is that look at this part that I will highlight. If I remove this part from it and I continue reading what is green, let us say I'll highlight this in green now. Let us say I were to read only this part. You see, the sentence still makes the same sense to you. Ramesh plays basketball at the stadium in Jaipur. Alright. So this thing here, what you see here, which is highlighted in yellow, this is what is known as a qualifier. So generally, you find a qualifier placed between two commas. So the big trick here in breaking down a large sentence to understand it is remove the qualifier. This is a very important hint, a very important trick. If you remove the qualifier, then you can read the shorter sentence. Now you've got the meaning that Ramesh plays basketball. You know what? You can even ignore where he plays it. Do you realize this? That perhaps the most important part of the sentence is only that Ramesh plays basketball. Thereafter, you can add the details. Okay, so here it tells you as to where he plays it. Okay, here it tells you something about him. So who is Ramesh? Where does he come from? How tall is he? It tells you something about him. Alright, so once you can remove the qualifier, then you can add them back. Okay, let's go ahead and see how we can remove these qualifiers from our first sentence. We are presently dealing with the first paragraph, with the first sentence of the first paragraph. The first sentence starts here and ends here. This is what we're dealing with. And I'd be zooming in further to focus only on this one sentence. I remember that I had told you some time back that we should be studying one paragraph at a time rather than one sentence or less than that. I remember that. But we are presently doing this exercise to teach you as to how you can read and shorten and understand a long sentence. So therefore, I will zoom into this one sentence, and then we'll go back and then we'll draw our inferences from the paragraph. So stay patient. Now let's look at this one sentence in some detail. So the first thing that I'll do is that I'll black this one out because we are dealing only with the first sentence. And now what we'll see is we'll try to identify as to where we find these commas. Okay, so you can see that you can see a comma here, and then you can see one here. It looks like a pair. Then you again start off with the same one here, and then you see the one here immediately next to it. That's like another pair. Then you see this one along with this one here. That's again a pair. And then you see one comma here. Of course, this is not a pair because the sentence ends here. So you have a comma followed by a full stop at the end of the sentence, of course. Now, the point is that in many cases it is possible for you to shorten the sentence by eliminating what is between these commas, because those commas would simply be describing what is given before. Like I said, that suppose you are describing Ramesh and you are saying that Ramesh, who is bald, plays basketball. So basically this is describing this. So what you can do is that you can eliminate this, read the sentence, and then bring it back. So what I'll do now is that I'll take the black highlighter and I'll try to remove all of these things which are there between these commas. Alright, so what I'd expect is that what I have removed from here is basically explaining this, so I've just removed it for the time being. Likewise, what I find here would be explaining what is given before it, So again I will remove it in black. I remove this as well. Again, this next part is within commas. It is saying that are accessible via personal computer. So it's telling you how it is accessible. So I'll remove this as well. Now you might say, why would I not remove this part? I can say that this part is also between commas, if I might say so. Now here's the thing, this is where you have to use a little bit of common sense. Okay, how do you identify a qualifier from something else? You can see that a qualifier would be describing something that is given before. So like for example, let me just show you this thing that is called pages. Okay, as you can see, this thing which is called pages definitely is referring to something given behind. So if I say that I came from the capital of India called Delhi, so I'm describing something about the capital of India, I'm giving it a name. So you can see that a qualifier talks about something given before, whereas when you look at this part here, it is not talking about something discussed before, and therefore this is not the qualifier. On the contrary, I'd retain this as one of the main parts of this sentence. Okay, so now I retain this. Also, now if you look at the what happens at the end, you can see that notably those who create documents for inclusion. So notably this. So if I say there were many cases of theft, notably of the collector himself. Suppose I say this, or notably of a popular actor. What that means is there were many cases, specifically one, which means again this last line here after the comma is giving you some details, right? I can even ignore these details. Now let us see what remains once we remove these seemingly extra looking points. The sentence that remains is that the World Wide Web, this thing in yellow, the World Wide Web raises legal issues about the rights of owners of intellectual property. Wow, this is a good looking sentence. It's a short sentence and makes a lot of sense. It means that we have picked out the right things. This is also a method of cross-checking. Let us say you had, instead of eliminating or erasing this thing in yellow, let us say I had done something else. Let me give you an example. Let's say I make this one okay, and I blacken this part. Now let's have a look at what remains. What remains is that the World Wide Web that are accessible via personal computer. Well, that doesn't sound complete. Again, contrast that with what we did previously. Let us say we go back to seeing what we just had. If you see this, when you say the World Wide Web raises legal issues about the rights of owners of intellectual property, this is a good, handsome, short sentence. So that is how you cross-check as to whether you have eliminated the right thing or not. So now when you look at this sentence, there are a lot of things you can gain, a lot of perspective you can have about not only the sentence but also the paragraph as well as the passage. Look at this word. The word's called issue. Okay, which means that you know that there is an issue in the passage. We always, not always, but mostly there is an issue in a passage. If you remember what I had said about reading structure in the previous lesson, RC1, generally there's an issue, and on the issue there would be two sides. This is the first side and this is the second side, and then perhaps there is the opinion of the author. So there is the opinion of the author. Now the author may either take this opinion, or he may take this opinion, or he may have a third opinion of his own. But it is good to identify that there is an issue. So this word tells you that there's an issue. And then it goes ahead and tells you that there is an issue regarding what? An issue regarding the intellectual property, right? So what you have done by hiding some of the extra things is that you have been able to get a one-word summary, or a one sentence, or a couple of words as a summary of that one long sentence, which means you have been able to comprehend it. Now let's take another step. Alright, we start with the clean slate again. So So we had erased all of these parts here, right? So we erased this, leaving behind this, and this was erased, and this was erased. So what remained with us was basically that the World Wide Web raises issues about the rights of owners of intellectual property. So what we had was that basically the World Wide Web raises issues of owners, so the rights of owners of intellectual property. So the legal issues of the rights of owners for intellectual property. Now we start removing this black highlight for each one of these parts one by one. So what you see here is that this is qualifying the World Wide Web. It tells you that the World Wide Web is a network of electronically produced and interconnected sites. So you're saying that the World Wide Web is basically a network of linked or interconnected sites. Now what you realize that when you remove the next one is that basically these things are called pages. So what you know is that basically the World Wide Web is a network of pages, okay, and these are accessible via the personal computer. All right, this is so simple. So what you know is that these lines here, all of these are basically telling you as to what the World Wide Web is. It's so simple, but you already have understood what the World Wide Web is. So move on to the next point. It says raises legal issues about the rights of intellectual property of the owners. And then if I remove the next part, it says notably those who create documents for inclusion on web pages. So it's talking particularly about certain kinds of owners. Who are those owners? These are the owners who create documents, the owners who create documents for putting on web pages. That means this first sentence says that the World Wide Web is basically some pages and there are issues about the intellectual property of those who put documents on the internet. Very simple. Okay. Now that we've understood this, we've understood a lot about the passage. Let's go ahead. All right. So now that we've understood the first sentence, we are back to looking at the first paragraph. So we're looking at the first paragraph, para 1. Now let's go ahead and read what follows here. Okay, so we've done until here. It says that some of these owners of intellectual property, that unless the copyright law is strengthened, intellectual property on the web will not be protected from copyright infringement. So we saw an issue in the previous line. The issue was about intellectual property. Now it says some of these owners. So the issue was for whom? The issue was for the owners, right? Now it's saying that some of these owners, so some of these owners, in the second sentence it says some of these owners claim that unless the copyright law is strengthened, unless the law is strengthened, this issue of intellectual property will remain because there will be no protection from copyright infringement, which means that let us say there is a person, as we saw there's an owner, the owner creates a document and he puts it on the World Wide Web. Now somebody takes it from him. That's copyright infringement. That's not what it is. Of course, it is more than that, but for the sake of our present discussion, let me just call that copyright, okay? A copyright infringement. So somebody has taken somebody's intellectual property. This is what he's saying. So you can understand that from this sentence. So it says, web users, however, claim that if their ability to access information is reduced, the web cannot live up to its potential as an open, interactive medium of communication. There are some very important points that I want to tell you, not just for this particular passage, but for things in general. In fact, you might have been able to understand by now that my focus is not on teaching you this one passage. My focus is on teaching you how to read passages in general. In fact, in this video, we will only see this introductory passage. I know it's seemingly a very little part of a passage that we've done in one lesson for half an hour, but you will learn a lot from this. There are a couple of more things that I want to tell you. We will do the remainder of the passage in the following videos, all right? Okay, so what you see here is that it talks of, there's a very important word, that is however. Okay, So you can see that there are two parties here. One is the owners, okay. Then it says web users, however. So what you can see is that there was an issue. What was the issue? The issue was of intellectual property, which was basically the copyright related issue, okay. And then you're able to see that there are two sides to this. The first side is that of the owners, and the second side is that of the web users. If you might remember, I had said that there is this thing that is called a reading structure, right? The reading structure is that you get to know as to what is going to happen in this passage. You can see that by having seen the first and the second sentence, you have been able to identify the issue. You've been able to identify the two parties. Of course, I may be wrong, but I've been able to anticipate as to what's going to happen next. So what are the owners saying? The owners are saying that the law must be strengthened. So they're saying make the copyright law stronger. On the other hand, however, what web users say is that if you strengthen the law and then you reduce the access, if you reduce the ability to access, then the web no longer remains open. So what they are saying here is that the web should remain open, should remain free, and what these people are saying is that it should be protected. So as you can see here, you have found the debate, you have found the two sides, and this is therefore the introductory passage that we have understood, and this introductory passage leads us to the other two passages. So we decided that before we could proceed from one paragraph to the next, we need to see as to whether we have succeeded in comprehending it or not. And now for that I need to ask myself a few questions. Have I been able to summarize it into a few points? I think the answer to this is yes. Am I in a position to anticipate what happens next? I think the answer to this is also yes. Now you might be having a concern, and that's a very genuine concern, and that concern would be that you look at the clock and we have taken almost 30 minutes to read just this one paragraph. Is that a fair amount of time that has been given to this? Well, the answer to that surely is no. In fact, in the exam, perhaps you would have just 30 seconds for this. So what have we done just now? Like I said, in this video, I was teaching you how to fish. Now you just see, with the techniques that you have got, I think you should be confident that the next time you see a passage like this, which is an introductory passage, the introductory paragraph, to any passage, go ahead, read it confidently. If there's a long sentence, break it down, finish it in 30 seconds, get your points, and move ahead and see the next paragraph thereafter. What we will do now, before I finish this video, is to check whether our anticipation was right or not. Like I said, the anticipation could either be right or it could be wrong. In either case, it does not matter. What matters is whether we were able to anticipate or not. Of course, it is desirable if our anticipation is right. Let's go ahead and see as to what we could see from the para 1 about para 2 and para 3. So now that we're done with the first paragraph, let's have a look at the second paragraph. So here we have the paragraph number 2, and as you can see, it is speaking about the debate, which means that we kind of know as to what's going to happen in para number 2. Let's go and have a look at the next paragraph. Now, when you see paragraph 3, it begins with to answer this question. Now let's just recollect as to what we have learned. We saw that in paragraph number 1, there was an issue, and that in the issue there were two sides. One was of the owners and the second was those of the web users. Alright, we saw para number 2, it was speaking about a debate, and definitely in the debate there would have been some questions, and then para number 3 goes ahead to answer those questions. So what you can see is that by having invested some time in para number 1, we have kind of got an idea of the structure of para 2 and para 3. We know what to expect From the first line, we know what to expect. When you know what to expect, you can read things quickly. Now at this point, perhaps you're thinking that is 30 minutes not a lot of time for this? You are right, 30 minutes is a lot of time. But what you have learned now is a method. And once you apply this method, the next time you read a passage like this, it will take you 5 minutes. In the next video, we will see para 2 and para 3 in some detail and also look at the questions, and then we'd be done with this one passage. I hope this lesson was fruitful for you. If you have any questions, you may ask me in the comment section and I'd be happy to respond. Thank you.